Hello, everyone. We are so happy to be here with Rachel Bennett again. Rachel was on last month talking about Chiron and did a wonderful job. Today, we're going to talk to Rachel about the North Node. Now, are we talking about the North and South Node or just the North Node?
Primarily, I think we should talk about the North Node, but we can talk about the South Node too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, they kind of go together, right? They're a pair, and there's a story that goes South Node. But let's hear from you. How do you delineate? No, wait, before for people who haven't seen your last video, what kind of astrologer are you?
So you asked me that last time. Um, so I kind of look more like evolutionary. I think is more what I take, but I've taken from different places and different people. And so I have kind of my set pattern of how I look at a chart depending on why they're coming to see me.
Okay. So yeah, well, if you're an evolutionary astrologer, then this North Node topic is totally up your alley because evolutionary astrologers. Okay. So we'll draw on the evolutionary astrologer in you today to say, what do you see in the North Node? Okay. So what do you see in the North Node?
So the North Node I love for evolutionary astrology because I feel like it's the direction that we are supposed to go in, you know? So I think that's kind of like our North Star point in the chart.
Okay. So when you say that, is it in this lifetime or all the lifetimes or throughout our lifetime or how does that work?
Particularly in this lifetime. So that's where we can talk about the South Node a little bit. I do believe that the South Node is like our past life and what we've already excelled at and the skills that we've already developed from a past life. However, of course, we may not remember all the details of that life. We still come into this life having a lot of those skills embedded into us. And so that South Node is kind of like our comfort zone and it's a skill set that we're born with. However, the North Node is always the opposite sign, and it's the direction that we are growing toward. So you kind of in your life, like what would be ideal is to find a balance between the two.
Interesting. Well, okay, I'm going to start out with a really hard question. I know we talked about going through the houses and stuff, but okay, what do you make of it when there's planets on the South Node? Because we're supposed to be kind of going away from the South Node, but if somebody has a planet on the South Node, they're built in that sign. We say they're kind of like they have Gemini on the South Node, but they have a Mercury and Gemini. They have all this Gemini energy, but then they're supposed to be going away from that. So how does that work?
Right. So I think so I am actually a prime example. I have Venus up to the same degree of my South Node.
Okay.
And so having Venus there, I know that the way that I've comprehended that is that in this life, I'm going to have a lot of karmic partners and a lot of karmic relationships. And possibly because you know how Venus rules over finances, I think finances is a lesson for me to learn and find balance in as well. So I guess I look at the South Node more as like your karma, and then the North Node more as your dharma.
Okay, interesting. So what's the difference between karma and dharma then?
So karma is something that you are trying to, it's what you've already built up to. So something that you're trying to master, I think, in a way, like and complete and find resolution to. Whereas like your dharma is something that you are giving to the world from this life. Like it feels, and you're also gaining like some learning from it, if that makes sense. Am I making am I making sense in how I'm describing it?
Hmm. Interesting. Okay, so you're saying when there's a planet on the South Node, there's something karmic about it going on. And so there's something kind of meant to be, or it's in the soul's path of evolution or something like that.
Right, right. So I think that there's a lesson usually wrapped up if it is a lesson from a past life that still needs to be worked through. If it's conjunct the South Node, that's the way that I view it or take it. So in my case with the Venus being there, there's a lot of relationships that may have had unresolved issues that are coming into my life for me to resolve those issues in this life.
Hmm.
And you mentioned Mercury
Hmm.
being maybe conjunct the South Node. That may be just in a way of reworking the way that you learn, that you're a student, or the way that you communicate with other people.
Hmm. So this evolutionary North Node, South Node story is reincarnationist. It assumes that there is reincarnation.
That's what I believe. However, not everybody believes that, but That's what I believe. Yeah. And if you don't want to believe in the reincarnation aspect, because I have had clients that don't believe that, I just tell them that they've come in with a certain set of skills that create kind of a comfort zone. But what the idea is to stretch to the other sign, which would be your north node, and try to grow from that comfort zone and not stay in that little circle.
Interesting. Yeah, like so just to speak to it like from a mechanical perspective, like I think of it mechanically, like we don't necessarily, it doesn't have to be a past life, but it can be how our soul senses machine is built, where it's the sun and the moon lines, or the sun and the moon eye, each is one eye, and they have these lines. And the sun and moon lines cross at the node. So like it's almost like the north node crosses in the front of your aura and the south node crosses behind you. So it's like
Mhm.
if you have a planet over there and you're acting it out, you're kind of moving backwards, right? Like it doesn't have to be a
Right.
reincarnation thing, but it could be something about the wiring of the aura that kind of creates this like backward forward motion. So if you're not a reincarnationist, you're listening to this, you can still be into the node, I think.
I think so too. That was a great way to describe it.
Okay. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so do we want to go through the houses? Like what do we think it means to have the North Node in the first house?
So having the north node in the first house is going to be, I love that we did bring up the south node because we're going to talk about, how to balance that out and where it may feel uncomfortable, where you're growing from. So having the north node in the first house is going to put a lot of emphasis on being your individual self and choosing yourself and your own, what you want, I guess, your own identity and what you want out of life versus being like kind of codependent and people pleasy. And, because the south node is going to automatically be in the seventh house. So you're going to look at that house and go, oh, well, my tendency is to want to make someone else happy because I was so relationship focused in a past life or in the with the what was the other version that you said with the comfort zone being there.
Yeah, or like you're built to, I don't know,
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, yeah. So having that as your comfort zone of being really relationship focused, the challenge is going to be, but where you're supposed to kind of work toward it is having identity and being a little bit more like courageous and determined and confident, all of those kinds of
Is
things.
it interesting how it's really hard to talk about the North Node without including the South Node? Because it's like the
Yeah,
story of the nodes, it's a story of evolution, it's a story of development. And so it always starts with that, like, the South Node being in seven, it's like where you're coming in or where you're starting is being relational or codependent, and you're moving out being self-focused, which is first house. And so there's that South Node to North Node, South Node to North Node is kind of like the story.
right.
Um, okay, so second house, North Node.
Second house, I say that is going to be focusing on your own sense of security, self-worth, means of income, but it's you making the income, so how you are making that money. Now you're going to be coming from the eighth house, and the eighth house is very resourceful and usually, I think, relies on external sources for income and security. And so it's going to be more focused on your own self-worth and what you want to do for work and how you want to manage your own money and all of those types of things is how I look at it.
Interesting. Yeah, I know somebody really well who has a North Node in the second, and it's like this person, I'm not breaking confidentiality, we don't know who it is, but this person has had a lot of relationships in this lifetime where they end up like supporting the other person, which is very eighth house. It's like someone's taking your resources, or resources in the partnership, and like what they're trying to learn is like to not support other people financially, and so they keep going into like the second, which is like my own resources, like how do I support myself, all that kind of stuff. So that isn't interesting because these can be very real. I mean, we're talking about them kind of in an abstract philosophical sense, but I mean, they make very real behavior choices in the
Yeah.
life.
Yeah, especially that south node can be subconscious because it is just in you like a comfort zone. I know that with the eighth house, having a south node in the eighth house, there is like a tendency sometimes for people to want to emotionally control in a way, and it can be in a financial way too. It may just be a comfort zone, like, hey, I like taking care of other people financially. But with that comes some kind of, entanglement, and what you're meant to do is to work hard for yourself and have your own inner security.
Yeah, interesting. Interesting. I love the development side of the node story. You know, a lot of the kind of astrology that we teach and learn at our school is development theory. It's called teleological astrology, but it's like it's all about like the teleologists are very development of the soul, but they look at every planet as like you're developing towards every planet one transit at a time. But I do like the development theory part of the node story that I think makes evolutionary very appealing because I feel like when you look at astrology from a development perspective, it's like, how can you lose, right? Like we're looking
Right.
developing, you know, and I actually brought out Jan Spiller's Astrology for the Soul book. Do you like this book?
Yes. Yeah, I read that. It's great. It's perfect go-to book. I
Love
suggest
this book.
everybody pick that up.
Yeah, and like when clients are having transits to their North Node, like I'll often have them read the chapter about their
Yes.
North Node because it's basically like, you know, it's like while you're in a transit to the node, read about the node. And it's really a phenomenal tool to because there's like 30 pages on each node. Oh my God. It's really bothering me, but then my nail polish doesn't match my necklace. Sorry, that was an aside.
Oh my gosh, you look great.
No, I didn't even think of it. Okay. Okay. So let's go on to North Node in the third house.
Okay, North Node in the third house. So that's going to be typically, I know the third house to me is sometimes funny because it rules like neighbors and like other random things, but I think of the third house more as like the mind and communication and learning. I do incorporate siblings into that as well. And it can be neighborhood and things like that. So with the North Node being in the third house, I think there's going to be a lot of focus on communicating and being the student. However, being having the South Node in the ninth house, I think that can be a struggle sometimes with reframing your mind to, oh, I'm going to learn in this life. I'm not here to necessarily just always be the teacher or the know-it-all or whatever, because that can happen. Also being like, you can look at it from a perspective of the ninth house being traveling and like foreign travel and things like that. And it can put more of a focus on building in your own community, I believe, and focusing on, okay, I need to be more here, more present here in this smaller circle instead of like traveling the world.
Interesting. Well, I love that. That's such a good delineation of just if you have South Node and ninth, it's like you think you're the teacher everywhere you go. And
Yeah.
like in the South Node or the North Node in the third, where it's like you're learning to be the student, you're learning to learn, you know. Now, okay, let's add a case to it because you'd mentioned that we could do this. Okay, so what if there was Mars on the South Node in the ninth house?
Ooh, okay. That would be a prime example of needing to learn patience.
Yeah, that person might be a real rabble rouser in the classroom, like always fighting with the professor, or like in religious circumstances, like always fighting with the pastor or, you know, something like that.
Totally, totally. Yeah, a little bit of the rebel can be in there just naturally and they can't even help it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I could see that.
Would you see delineate it similarly if the South Node was in Aries in the ninth house?
Ooh, yeah. I vary because obviously Mars, right? So it would be very similar. It would be the similar things that you'd be working on. It less self-focused, I think, is and you'd want to be more focused in connection and collaboration and harmony and those types of things rather than being more self-focused in the sense that I guess the negative qualities is what you wouldn't want to continue to work on, like being impatient or impulsive or, you know, switch your moods up too fast, those types of things, I guess I would work on.
And so I guess the evolutionary astrologers, if there was like Aries on the South Node, they would then look to the Mars placement in the chart because they look at like South Node sign and house. And
Yeah,
then they look at the ruler of that,
ruler.
the placement of that for like more information. And then they would
Yeah,
look at the North Node sign and house and then ruler of that. Is it
yeah, I believe that's true. I
okay?
tend to do that with the signs too.
Okay. Now, do you do like North Node readings? Is that one of the readings you give?
Yeah, I have by request. Yeah, I've definitely done North Node readings.
Okay. Because I know that sometimes at fairs you do kind of shorter readings.
Yeah, I do shorter readings at fairs. Pretty much like about 30 to 45 minutes is kind
Okay.
of my max out time. When I'm on Zoom, it's, you know, I go up all the way to 90 minutes. And then I also do readings at a metaphysical store on the weekends, and I just charge $2 a minute
Oh,
and let them kind of, I get through what I need to tell them about that, let them ask as many questions as they want, and it's just per minute at that point.
Interesting. Okay, cool. So like, okay, let's just keep working the signs and houses. So let's say we had that North Node in the third house and we're learning to be the student there. But let's say it was in Cancer versus Gemini. Like, how would those two be different?
Yeah, that would be very different if Cancer was in the third house. I would think that it would have more of an emotional kind of learning aspect to it. So maybe they're learning things in their family dynamic. Maybe they're learning things in being a parent. Maybe they're learning things in just, it could actually be in school that they're learning things too, like within the relationships with other students or with their siblings or things like that, because it's in that third house. So I would imagine that those relationships would be very important for them and have a lot of lessons embedded in them being in the third house.
Mhm. And then what about Gemini there?
Oh, if Gemini was there, I mean, Gemini in the third house is really home so for Gemini to be there. And so I would imagine Gemini would be. So I have met, and I actually have, I'm going to put her on blast. My best friend has Gemini in the third house and North Node there. So working on being the student and being okay with being the student and being curious and not the know-it-all, doesn't have to know everything, not having that pressure on themselves. I think working on being gentle. I know that's to me, when I think of the North Node in the third house, I think working on like that slower pace than that gentle, that open, that receptive of learning. That's really the way my brain sees it.
Nice. Yeah, I love your very clear delineations. I can see where you're a very good reader, like just, for,
Thank you.
kind of thing. Okay. Do you feel like going to the fourth house?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
So North Node in the fourth house, I actually have that one, so I'm pretty familiar with it. That would be around home and family, typically is the answer for the fourth house, but it goes a lot deeper than that. I think you can look at when you're doing your own inner work. You do your inner work and look at kind of like generational patterns and how have you evolved as a person from as a child to where you are now and things like that. That's kind of what I look at for fourth house things. And it can actually be physical house or home or where you live.
Mhm.
So North Node being there, there'd be a focus on that. So there'd be a focus on either like raising a family, maybe you have a desire for a family, maybe you don't have a desire for a family, and you're trying to uncover like, oh, okay, well then what makes me happy being at home and making my home beautiful and comfortable and doing that. That's where I think the inner work, because I have it, but I also have the North Node, fourth house in Pisces. So with Pisces, it's very natural for me to want to be at home and be very spiritual and make it my sanctuary. That's kind of how it shows up for me.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah, I feel like it's like if we look at it with the South Node involved, it's like you're going from a career focus, which would be 10th house, into a
Mhm.
more home and family focus. So like,
Right.
maybe you work all the time in the first half of your life, but in the second half of your life, you start raising children and, or it could be if Pisces is there, it's like I don't know, start looking at ancestral heritage and lands and I don't know, something like that. But okay, where's your Jupiter?
My Jupiter
Yeah, the ruler.
my Jupiter is in the seventh house.
Okay, nice, nice. I don't know if you use new or old rulers, but or where's your Neptune? I could ask you that. Where's your Neptune?
Oh, my Neptune. My Neptune is in the second house.
In the second house. Okay, interesting. So we could say it's like you would then meld that fourth house story with the second house story, and that would be like how you
Yeah.
so um
Hmm.
okay. Fifth house. I have the North Node in the fifth house.
You do?
I
Can I
do.
ask what sign it's in?
It's in Libra,
Ooh,
conjunct Pluto.
very good, very good. That's where
And
I
Venus.
all your artistic qualities really come out. I can tell. I like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and it's interesting because I have, okay, can I tell you my North Node story?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I have Aries South Node on the 11th house, and I have a natal Mars square Sun Mercury. And so it's like I came in with a very brutal South Node placement, and it's like came in fighting with groups, kind of at war with the community, and so
Yeah.
I did all this work with translations and like fighting about these translations, and I wrote astrological remediation to be like kind of in some ways fighting with the astrological community of like don't make mean predictions, like there's always a remedy, like so I kind of did all this like scholarship fighting, which is very South Node in 11, and it's crazy. Someone identified that my South Node line runs through Rome, and some astrologers think I'm the reincarnation of this ancient astrologer named Thrasyllus, who's a Greek grammarian living in Rome. And so it's like it's kind of this like weird
Love that.
thing. But but it moves to my North Node in the fifth house, which is in Libra conjunct Venus and Pluto. And it's like what I'm moving into in my old age is like collaborative art projects. Like I don't, it's like I'm always making beads and working with people and making their chart beads and stuff like that. And it's like, and I can fight. I still do. Like I'm fighting online right now because the Mercury's hitting my Sun Mercury square. So I'm like debating
Oh,
online right now. But then I'm like, but I'll make you your chart bouquet though. That's my North Node in Libra. But I know this episode's not about me, but I do think it's helpful to hear a South Node, North Node story that's very
yeah.
clear of like I was really focused on this fighting thing, and now
Mhm.
I'm really focused on this art and getting along thing. And like it's like
Yeah.
that is kind of like early life South Node, late life North Node kind of thing.
I totally agree. I totally agree. I love that story. I love that you're kind of that fighter powerhouse. Like you have all of that in you, and those are good strengths to use. But then now you're gearing towards like the more creative, which I totally see just in the way that you portray yourself, like the creative in you. And so
Yeah.
it warms my heart to know that you do like the jewelry part, and like I saw that at the fairs too. So
Yeah.
that totally makes sense now that you explain that.
Yeah, and I think it like it speaks to the evolution of a human, right? Of like just because we're one way when we're young, the North Node allows us to change into a different kind of focus as we get older, which I think is really good. So what's your take on North Node at 5?
North Node in five. North Node in five has a lot of options, right? Because the fifth house is romance, creativity, children, inner child, like all of that. It's self-expression, really. And so having a North Node in the fifth house, I'm like jealous of everyone with a North Node in the fifth house because that sounds like a really fun house to have a North Node in. North Node, I believe, that's where they have to work. So they have to work on their self-expression and their creativity. It may not come naturally to them in the beginning of life to be self-expressive and creative and maybe romantic and connecting with other people on the romantic side, or maybe not wanting to have children in the beginning of life, or some things like that or it could last throughout their whole life that they don't want to have children, but then they find themselves connecting with their inner child and they're like, hey, this makes me feel very fulfilled and happy because they found that piece of themselves that makes them happy. So those are the things that I would incorporate in thinking that the North Node, with the North Node being in the fifth house.
Beautiful. That was really good. Like I think you're totally spot on there with where it seems like you're going from the 11th house focus, which is like to blend into the community, and
Mhm.
then you're moving into like popping out in creative expression kind of your own expression. And I can
Right.
see where like, you're saying that with kids. It's like maybe this kind of chart doesn't isn't born being like, I'm gonna grow up and be a mother, but they evolve into that like idea, I'm gonna have kids later. It comes later kind of thing.
Totally. Yeah, I could see that.
Okay. All right, North Node at 6.
North Node in the sixth.
We're
So they
making you do all the work here. This is fun.
Yeah, I like it. Bring it on. I love astrology. So North Node in the sixth to me is going to be working on the first thing I think of is schedule and routine and health, and also responsibility and service to others. So North Node in the sixth house, I would imagine, because the opposite is going to be the 12th house. So they're coming from a space of kind of maybe being in their head or private, or um, in solitude to some degree. I mean, it depends on what the sign is in the 12th house and what the sign is in the sixth house, but they're coming from a space where it's a little bit more chill and quiet, and they're in that reflective space, I suppose. Maybe artistic, it depends on what that 12th house. So they're going into the sixth house where they're meant more to be structured, depending on what the sign is. So working on structure and routine and prioritizing their body in this life, I think is very important for sixth house north nodes, prioritizing their health and then looking at how they choose to handle their responsibilities and possibly it to me, depending on the rest of the chart, I often have seen north nodes in the sixth house become people that want to be in service in this life.
Mm.
Maybe earlier in their life, they didn't really want it. They're like, I don't want to volunteer. I don't want to, I don't want to be in service in any way. And then later on, they're like, oh, okay, I do want to be in service. I do remember one chart I read and it was like perfect for North Node in the sixth house, but they decided later on in life they wanted to be a foster parent for pets. And that was like their way of expressing their new desire and drive for North Node in the sixth house, because that also incorporates the responsibility aspect of having pets. And so they became like a foster parent for pets, and that really fulfilled them.
Oh my God, this is so crazy. I know someone with a North Node Moon conjunction in Cancer in the sixth house, and she is a dog sitter in her old age. And she like, okay, she finally like, and she's also caregiving her parents. But like, the thing is like, seriously, she wasn't able to get a dog, and then she finally got a dog, and like her whole Facebook is like that dog, and like her heart is with that dog. I mean, it is
That's
sixth
so
house.
sweet.
It's so sweet, and like. And I think it is so real when people have nodes and six about their pets and their animals.
Oh yeah, I believe it. Yeah.
Like there's this Facebooker I watch and she's like lives in this van with her cat and like the girl loves her cat like it's a person, you know what I mean? And so it's like yeah, we don't want to underestimate the power of sixth house and pets because
Right.
yeah, I mean it depends on the sign there, but if it's an emotional or a water sign, you can definitely see some attachment to animals.
Definitely.
But I love what you're saying about the health and well-being side of things and
Yeah.
the daily schedule and just it's a kind of a Virgoic house. I mean, not to make it that sign to house ratio, but like yeah, it is kind of that daily schedule kind of thing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that becomes at some point in their life, I think that they realize, oh, I need to manage and make my routine an actual routine. And so
Yeah.
I'm sure that that's some part of their life lesson.
Yeah, interesting. All right, you're really good at this. Okay, North Node in the seventh house.
Oh, North Node in the seventh. So this is going to be focusing on relationships, less focusing maybe on yourself, depending on again on the sign that we're looking at where they are. But this is going to be more toward I'm sure this person would probably consider, a marriage, maybe a few, because they would be naturally inclined to focus on that. But also more than just relationships or marriage, just work on like being, I guess I associate seventh house to Libra, obviously. So I'm thinking diplomatic, harmonizing, cooperative with others, that other focus would be what they need to work on. But with the South Node being in the first, they're naturally going to know, probably very innately, I know what I want and I know when I want it. So they're going to have to learn, oh, there's another person involved in this. Okay, how do I figure out how to cooperate and harmonize with them?
Mhm. Interesting. Yeah, I love it. And if we see it, it's like that opposite theme of having the South Node in seven moving towards one, which is I kind of came in built for relationships. I was kind of on the codependent side in my earlier age, and I'm learning to be fierce and alone. And this one's the opposite of like I came in being okay alone, but I'm learning to cooperate going forward. And like so it is that like one to seven evolution. And
Yep,
yeah. Okay.
totally.
Now, what if they had something combative, like they had Mars conjunct the North Node in Aries in the seventh? What would that be like?
Ooh, Mars conjunct. Say that again. Mars conjunct the North Node in Aries in the seventh.
Yeah.
Okay. So I would imagine that they're naturally willing or should be growing into being a leader, possibly in that relationship. There are those dynamics, or in like a marriage or in a business partnership. They're taking on the more like courageous, enthusiastic, confident kind of like energy, I would imagine, in whatever one-on-one serious commitment that they're in.
Mhm. Interesting. Yeah, I would think that maybe they would be growing towards like sparring, like maybe they're an ultimate fighter and they're growing in sparring partners or like that's such a weird
Mhm.
one because Libra on the first like flips everything. So it's like
It
you're
does.
being Libran about being yourself, which is connective about it like flips the houses. So that one's actually kind of
Hmm. It
hard.
is kind of hard too because you'd have to imagine they're a Libra rising. So how do they present themselves?
I
Because
know
you
they're
know they're
like
going to present themselves pretty like I don't know, agreeable to some degree. That's how I always see Libra risings as pretty agreeable.
totally, we would say that their Venus sign, their Venus house and sign is going to be important in their early years. So being agreeable is going to be important in their early years, but then partnering up and being disagreeable is like what's happening in their second half of life. So like maybe they're a brutal politician or a leader, but they're partnering up and collaborating. I mean, that one's hard.
Yeah.
Let's do an easier one. Let's say it was Venus in Libra conjunct the North Node in seven.
Oh man. Yeah, that's easy. So Venus in Libra conjunct the North Node in seventh. So they're, I mean, not to be negative by any means, but they may be a little bit obsessed with relationships. Yeah, that
Yeah.
could be that. Like they could take on all the like heavy characteristics of, Libra at that point because it's in its house, it's in the house that it's comfortable in. And with the North Node there though, there's still going to be a little bit of a growth period for them, obviously, right? Because they're coming with that Aries skill set and they're an Aries rising. So they're going to have some sense of self, but they probably later on in life become a little bit merged closely or obsessed with relationships or marriage or something like that.
Yeah, interesting. Um, okay, good. This is really good. Okay, so let's move on to now. I mean, I almost want to do a few more flavors in seven, just so listeners can kind of get a feel for the different signs and planets. Like if you had Moon in Cancer conjunct the North Node in seven, how's that different?
So Moon in Cancer, I think, is going to prioritize emotional security in a relationship. And so their South Node is going to be in Capricorn. So they're going to be going from, and it's in the first house. So they're going to be going from possibly the beginning of life being kind of like a leader and um independent to some degree, and then later on merge to realizing that maybe they want a family or they want to spend more time with their partner at home, but they really value that deep emotional security where they're safe to let out their emotions because if they're a Capricorn rising as well, being in the first house, I would imagine that opening up in a very vulnerable emotional way could be a stretch for them. And then they get to, working toward the Cancer North Node, that's going, and Moon being there, all of that energy, they're going to be working a lot on emotional stuff and connecting because it's in the seventh house.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah, that looks like a very marriage looking seventh house of just
Yeah.
like partnered up and made a home and
Hmm.
whereas the Venus and Libra there could partner up in art or is this kind of a socialite kind of or is wearing a lot of jewelry and fashion
Totally.
and whereas the Moon in Cancer is just like holding on for dear life to one person and it's
Yeah.
kind of different. It
It
hits
is a very
different.
different vibe actually, because if we talk about Libra, like Libra is more about like, yeah, the romance of it all and the like experience of relationship and they like to be seen with their partner possibly, all of those types of things. Whereas like Cancer is like, I'm cool just being at home with my partner, you know?
Yeah, it's like the Venus one is like a trophy wife. Like,
Yeah.
here. Okay, I'll do one more in seven just because it's kind of interesting. What about Mercury conjunct the North Node in Gemini in seven?
Oh my gosh. So they are going to very much value connecting with people on a mental note. So like I think instantly when you said that, I was like, oh, sapiosexual. Like
Yeah, yeah,
that's
especially if it's
that's
sextile Mars or something.
yeah, like that's instantly what I thought. So communication is obviously going to be very important. And they need to have a partner that they can communicate with and build on the intellectual stimulation to some degree, because that's going to be That's why I thought sapiosexual instantly with that. You said Mercury and Gemini, so it's all of those mind kind of energies in the seventh house. My seventh house is Gemini, so I definitely understand that. I wouldn't be able to be with a partner who couldn't have like those intellectual talks where we can talk and connect and grow, and of course we can talk about emotions and things too, but it's like the airiness is what like turns me on, you know.
Well, I mean, I know we're not partners, but I'm a Gemini rising, so it's nice because I can keep up with you.
Yeah, yeah. I like the back and forth flow. It works.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so all right, let's move on to the eighth house, the North Node in the eighth.
Okay, so North Node in the eighth is going to be about, I sense it as vulnerability and allowing other people to help you. And it's also going to be a large focus, I think, on deep transformation, because we look at the eighth house as transformation as well. I know we talked about it in more of a monetary, like financial way in the beginning, but the eighth house can go very deep because what is it? It's like sex, death, taxes. Like there's so many things that go into the eighth house that the eighth house north node would be a pretty intense house to have a north node in.
Mm,
But
yeah,
for good reason, a lot of transformation and growth will happen in this life.
yeah. Seems like it would be kind of mergy, sexually, financially, spiritually. It's kind of
Yeah.
merging resources. Whereas if you had North Node in second, you're trying to make it your own way. Whereas in eight, you're trying to learn how to merge.
Yeah, but it's that learning piece. It might be uncomfortable to
Yeah.
learn that. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. All right, how about ninth house?
So ninth house,
Getting all the
north,
opposites of the other houses we did. So it's like,
we are. Yeah. And
yeah.
I'm trying to incorporate some other like little words, I guess, or ways of looking at it. So in the ninth house, I'm thinking north node. Um, let's think of the pot. It depends on the sign again. North node in the ninth house, I think would have to do with discovering your own belief system, because it does rule like how you believe that if you believe, I don't know if you're religious or anything like that, you may go through like just some kind of spiritual discovery at some point in your life where you're being called to find like your deep inner truth, having it in the ninth house. You may be called to teach as well. You may be called to just have lots of experiences of higher education or foreign travel. That could be a thing as well. There's just a lot of experiential things that may happen in one's life when they have a north node in the ninth house. As far as like adventure, then learning from experience, you know what I mean?
Interesting. And like, I feel like you'd be going from like a more remedial type of thinking, which is very third house, which is like nuts and bolts of stuff, into a more higher philosophical bent or like religious bent in the second part of life, where the ninth house really kind of pushes you beyond your current state philosophically, So, that's why traveling to other countries and stuff like that is very ninth house, is like you really go outside of your local sphere. So yeah, you
Mhm.
might be kind of more local and just staying within your culture of origin, and then in the second half of life you really like venture out.
Yeah, and you could be very local and have that comfort zone of locality, but then want to study philosophy and be a professor somewhere, in this life, but still be in your local community because you're finding the balance between the third and the ninth.
Yeah, and I mean, if we were just going to put a few signs on there, it's like I feel like Aquarius on the ninth is very like scientific, technical philosophies like anthropology and sociology and astrology. And then, if you had Cancer on the ninth, you might learn like home economics, or, if it was Sagittarius on the ninth, it might be general philosophy and travel. So I think that the sign on the ninth house really does color how you expand and what areas you expand into. Any comments on the signs on nine?
Signs. I mean, yeah, I definitely especially when it comes to the ninth house and the third house, because it's basically the mind to some degree. They're ruling the way that you're thinking, the mind and expansion, all of that, absorbing expansion, all of that. So they do really get colored by the signs. I look at the signs as like the signs represent how or the energy of what we're looking at in a chart. Whereas like the house is where and what does that house rule? So we can look at like where will you see that energy, when we're looking at it. And then the planets is basically what is happening.
Mhm.
I look at like what is happening in your life. So the what, where, and the how kind of is how I interpret it.
Interesting. Okay. We have, let's see, 10, 11, 12. We have three more. Okay, so 10th
Okay.
house.
Yeah, so 10th house, North Node. So they're going to be focusing on building their public image and building their career. And again, the sign matters a lot, but that's going to be a growth experience for them from coming. Maybe they're more of a homebody, or maybe they like live with their parents until later on in life or something like that. Who knows what having the South Node fourth house, they may find a lot of comfort and security just being at home and not having a public image or having kind of a built career. So it may be a stretch for them to have to build themselves in that way.
Interesting. Yeah, they might come in as a real mama's boy or something like that. Like
That's
that.
exactly like what in my head I was thinking, but I didn't want to say it out loud.
Yeah, leave it to me to say all that stuff. Well, yeah, okay, so yeah, it's like you come in being like not too attached to your family, but like really attached to the home and family. And then you're kind of learning to be a hard worker and career focused individual as you grow older. Looking more into your public reputation, where you're going, what you need to do outside of the house, kind of thing. Um, Okay, now I'm going to give you a hard case. Okay, what about when the ruler of the North Node is on the South Node? So let's say it was Capricorn is on your 10th house, you have your South Node there, but your Saturn is in Cancer.
Okay. Yeah, that's a hard one. That's going to be a lot of really trying to find the balance between the two, but then there's going to be lessons obviously going on, especially because you use the planet of Saturn. I'm thinking like heavy lessons and patience and, karma and things to wrap up, and you put that on the South Node, right?
Right.
Yeah, in Cancer.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you'd have depending on what house that's in, you would have some heavy things to sift through as far as when it comes to um, maybe monitoring or regulating your emotions or expressing your emotions. I would imagine therapy would probably be a must with those placements. And looking at, some past baggage that you may have had from either a previous life or younger in this life of family stuff
Yeah.
and feeling comfortable or secure within yourself. Like I would imagine with that kind of placement, I would definitely recommend therapy.
Yeah. I need therapy for trying to delineate such a thing. No, I'm just kidding. No, but okay, so when we have the ruler of the North Node in this on the South Node, it's like you're going towards your North Node, but
Right.
you kind of get propelled back towards your South Node. And I think this brings up an important point about the nodes. So people always think you get done with your South Node, you move towards your North Node, and you're done with your South Node. Well, if you really know about this cyclicalism indicated by astrology, your South Node gets cyclically indicated by transits over and over again. So if you have a Cancer South Node and the sun goes through Cancer, you're going to go back to your South Node for a second as the sun
Yep.
goes over your node. And so
Mhm.
if you have Saturn there, it's like you go back in there and you're just like, oh, Cancer, oh, I don't know if I'm doing very good in this emotional area. And like you're going to
Yep.
waffle back to your South Node. And then when the sun goes up and it goes to Capricorn, you're going to waffle towards your North Node. So, I mean, I think we have to remember that there is this kind of teeter-totter between the nodes. And one of the reasons, have you heard of is something being in the bends of the node?
No. Oh, I've heard the term, but no, you'd have to explain it to me.
So that's when there's something square to the nodes. So it's like with the
Yeah.
Cancer Capricorn cusp, we're going like home and family to career, whatever. But if we have something in Libra or Aries in the bends of the node, it's
Mhm.
like you'll have a planet over here that it expresses, but when it does, you then have to waffle back and forth of like which side of the node am I going to go towards? And so it
Mhm.
in the bends is kind of an interesting place for the teeter-totter to is emphasized with that something in the bends of the node. So that's also a thing.
Yeah, totally. That makes sense because they're trigger points for us, right?
Yeah,
So,
exactly. So you're triggered from the side, and then you have to decide, am I gonna go north or south? And so we want to
right.
go north, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. That
There.
totally, yep, that makes sense.
Okay, North Node 11th.
And the 11th. Okay, so you're going from the fifth house would be the comfort zone. So, and then we're going into the 11th house, which is like community, friendships. It can be goals and dreams as well. I do incorporate that in the 11th house. And so the first thing I think of is like, hmm, I was gonna say like expansion, but that's not the word that I'm wanting to look for. But so the North Node and having the North Node in the 11th house, I would imagine that building friendships and community and a place that feels like home within your friend group would be very important. Or you may have a specific goal that you are attached to that you want to complete, and it may involve a lot of other people. And coming from the South Node, there was a lot of like control as far as I can self-express in this way by myself. That's the way I kind of look at it. And then now I have to incorporate other people in my expression, or you don't have to, but I kind of imagine it in a humanitarian sense or incorporating like bigger, broader, rather than just like fifth house being like me, all about me.
Interesting, like maybe you incorporate the genre or community that your art would be received by. It's like maybe you
Yeah.
just make whatever you want when your South Node's in the fifth, and you're just like, I make whatever I feel like. But then you
Mhm.
start rendering it to the community or the crowd or the genre that is on 11 as you move towards the 11th. It could also be that you move away from being really focused on your own self, production, and you move towards, being, let's say you're an artist in your early years, you might move into working in the arts,
Right.
where you go more community service oriented in the art field or something. It depends on the
Yeah.
signs, but
Yeah, that's what I meant about getting kind of like bigger is like making your focus a little bit bigger and then sharing that with a people or a community that you connect with.
yeah.
That's, yeah, I see that. It does kind of remind me of like somebody who may have gone like who is in the LGBTQ community and they're like self-expressive in the beginning of, well, actually they may not be as depending on how they're opening up and everything, but then going to share all of this, finding that community, like, I mean, I identify with that community, so that's the way I'm kind of relating it to my head, but like connecting with that community later on in life instead of just like holding it maybe to yourself in like a creative way and expressing it that, or like in your romantic one-on-one connections
Hmm.
and smaller, like smaller bits and pieces, and then broader, like really becoming expansive and maybe a voice for your community or something like that.
Yeah, like you go political. So wait, do you have pride nails on? Is that what those are?
I do.
Oh my
Yes.
God, it's Pride Month. So
I know. I'm
what
going
is
this
your
weekend.
queer
I'm so
identity?
excited.
Can I ask?
What was that?
What is your Q identity? Can I ask?
Bisexual.
Oh, you're bisexual. Okay, cool. Um, yeah, that we definitely celebrate Pride Month at Moira Press. I mean, in many different ways. But and don't you think astrology is a great overlay with, I mean, I feel like astrology is identity politics, which queerness is also identity politics and gender theory. So it's like a lot of people who are of the Q side of things also love astrology because of like the analysis of self in relation to community, which is kind of that fifth, 11th house.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to describe was kind of that kind of a feel, because I know in the beginning of life, it's like, especially, yeah, for anyone who's in the community, it's like, who can I trust? Who can I connect with? I need to find my people. And then later on in life, it's like, oh my God, I found my people. How do I help my people and like connect with my people? So that's how I kind of looked at the fifth and 11th for a second there.
That's awesome. I love that example. I'm trying to think of putting different signs on there. Like if you had Cancer on the fifth and Capricorn on the 11th, like maybe in your early years, you'd be focused on tending your own children, which would be Cancer on the fifth. And then in your older years, you'd be on boards, which is very Capricorn in the 11th, like help
Very.
be on the PTA. That's what you do.
Oh, there you go. That's perfect. And
Yeah,
that's like kind of humanitarian. Yeah, you got all of it. Good job. I like that
yeah.
one.
Okay. It's really, and for anyone who's watching, if you want to do some homework, I mean, I think it would be cool to take some of these delineations that we've done and put different signs on them, because we really can only get through the houses in this one episode. But I mean, you saw what we did with the seventh house of really, just running different signs on it and say, like, how does that change the coloring out? And of course, in Jan Spiller's book, Astrology for the Soul, you can read about your North Node house and sign. I think she, kind of
He does.
tries to meld both of those. So I think it's a good muscle to work for yourself to like put different signs on the same house and then see how that changes the node story kind of thing.
Mhm. I agree.
Okay, the 12th house, the
The
most
12th.
elusive of all house. No, I don't know.
I know it is though, right? It is very elusive and it holds, there's a lot of things that can go into the 12th house. Some of them really amazing and good, and some of them a little bit scary, like hidden enemies. I don't ever like the fact that that was in there, but it's got to be somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So, the North Node being in the 12th house, I would imagine would be a person, depending again on the sign, but would be a person who was probably comfortable with having responsibility or having some structure, or thinking of more like a little bit, depending on the sign, thinking of a checklist of like, okay, this is what my day-to-day is. I'm just going to live, this is the way my day is going to look. And then they are being pulled into going a little bit deeper and deeper into themselves, and like leaning more on basing decisions, depending on again on the sign, on looking at like their mental health or their intuitive insights or their connection to spirituality, whatever they believe in as far as their higher power, and like opening themselves a little bit more toward that, more of the 12th housey stuff, which is like, spirituality. And there's a lot of things. I think the 12th house actually rules karma too, doesn't it?
I mean, yeah, I mean, I think like, you could say that.
Yeah, yeah, there's a lot of things in the 12th house. So I would imagine a person that would just have, I'm trying to think of a sign that would be very interesting to have in the 12th house that's a little bit more closed up. Like even like maybe Capricorn kind of, yeah, in the 12th house in North Node.
I feel like that would be like ancient spiritual traditions, like looking into like the Yavana Jataka or like ancient Judaic texts or something like
Yeah.
that, if it was being used well.
Yeah, I agree. I think yeah, that's a great one. Yeah, that'd be used wonderfully.
I see what you're saying where it seems kind of hard, but like what if we had Pisces on 12?
Pisces on 12 is a lot easier. So I would think, because that's where it would be at home, I would see that a person would be, like I was describing in the beginning, they're used to having their routine and they're comfortable with that, their responsibilities. They're in service to other people. That's a comfort zone for them. But then they are later on in life, they are going toward realizing that they want to work on themselves like on a deeper level, whether that's engaging in their own spiritual routine, and embracing and putting more focus on their mental health or artistic abilities or being intuitive. I would imagine a North Node in the 12th house definitely could be like a psychic or an intuitive or someone who's helping with divination to some degree. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes me think of like consciousness workers, like, yogis and really evolved like Reiki masters and
Mhm.
yeah, like it really evolved consciousness workers. Now, of course, a less evolved node there could be like an alcoholic or, if
Yeah.
like if we were not using our node well,
Right.
um, not to try to be a prude or anything like that. But I have rocked and I have rolled, Rachel. I mean, I am no longer allowed to do those things. But I will tell you that
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
I think there's a lot of different ways to, I mean, I guess that's a really good question since we have 5 minutes here. It's like, do you think there's an evolved way to use your node and an unevolved way, or like do you think
Yeah.
your node makes you better at it, or what do you think?
I do think there is unfortunately an unevolved way. So I think the last video I made with you too is I just believe so strongly in free will. And so I believe that our chart is basically a map for us, and there's a lot of, goals that we have coming into life, but we also have some free will sprinkled in there. And so I think with having, let's say with Pisces in the 12th house, like you said, you mentioned addiction. Addiction is very much an something that somebody could naturally be inclined. It's the escaping reality thing.
Wait, don't you work in addiction?
Yeah.
Okay, okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do. I'm a drug and alcohol counselor.
Okay.
So yeah, but having the 12th house north node like that, I think it comes down to escaping reality because you can overdo spirituality too. You can just sit there and try to like completely pretend reality does not exist and you don't have to pay bills and you just want to meditate all day or whatever, and that would be a lot of focus on too much focus. So it's all about what we talked about in the very beginning about balancing the two, right? So
Interesting.
you, in that case, you would need to have some structure and some routine in your life to be able to enjoy the parts like of the 12th house that you enjoy. But like you were saying, sorry, you were talking about the abuse of any of the houses. There are negative qualities to any of those houses that you could fall into
Hmm.
just because you'd feel some pull towards them because it's your north node. It does have a pulling or like an attraction, magnetic attraction.
I like what you're saying there about how there's something healthy about balancing your south node and your north node. I mean, we always think like north node, north node, north node, but if we say that we kind of came in, it's almost like a springboard, like the south node is a springboard to us going towards our north node of like, if we use that as a springboard to move forward, then that south node stays in a healthy equation, right? Like it's like if we stay in our south node, we're not developing. It would be like always looking backwards and never looking forward, right? But it's like it's okay to like look backwards and take in the view and then like go forward. And I think I like what you're saying there of like balance out the equation by looking at both nodes in some
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah, definitely. And then tap in with yourself just every once in a while, especially when the bends are at play, right? So we've got to
Yeah.
tap in with ourselves and go, hey, this transit is happening right now. How am I doing with this? I know I have a North Node return actually happening early next year. So a
Mm.
North Node return for me is having me check in. Am I embracing the Pisces qualities, Pisces North Node qualities that I want to embrace right now?
Interesting. Yeah, yeah. And remember, if you have a transit your node, read about your node while you're in the transit your node, whether it be the sun on the node or Mars on the node, Jupiter, anything where the node is highlighted. I think it's really good to really try to enhance that development by studying what you're going towards in that way. So, so Rachel, we only have 2 minutes left, and I do, yeah, I might get rejected here, but I just think you're so good at this. Would you ever want to be on more videos at the Moira Press?
Of course. I love being on these videos.
Really, I really want you to meet
Yeah.
Ricky, who does our culture and astrology show, and you're making me want to do like a show on like Chiron and culture or no, nodes and culture, which would be cool.
Yes, please sign me up. You've got me. I'm available. Let's make it happen.
Okay, well, when we hang up, I'm gonna send you an email to get you on the schedule because I really think you're so smart and such a bright light, and we learned so much from you, and I would like to continue.
Thank you. I mean, yeah, I'm so glad that you came up to me at a random MeWe fair and and found me and we connected. So I'm
Yeah.
grateful for you.
Oh my. All right. Any last words?
Not really. I mean, I'm gonna give you my TikTok. I've been posting a lot of astrology stuff on my TikTok, so people can find me on there if they want any private readings. I'll also put out my email. But yeah, I'm excited to be on here and thank you again.
Yeah. So how can we find you though?
Oh, yeah, yeah. So my TikTok and my Instagram are pretty much ways that I am. My TikTok, if I can give you that one, that is Rachel.love the and sign above or at Rachel Channels 444. I know all my stuff is really long, but I have a business also Love and Above. I incorporate like my astrology under that, but I also do Reiki because I'm a Reiki master teacher. So I incorporate like all of my spiritual gifts under Love and Above, which is my company that I'm building right now. But yeah, TikTok, Instagram, and email, and I'll give those details to you to put at the bottom of the video.
Yeah. Please email me anything you want for contact info, and I will add it to the video. All right. Thank you, Rachel. I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
All right. Talk to you
You
soon.
too.
Bye.
Bye.